I have just finished Lost Soul Aside, and there's a lot to say. In this review, I'll give you everything you need to know if you're curious about the game. I care a lot about storytelling, so no matter how good or bad the story is, this review is completely spoiler-free. Let's dive in. Before talking about gameplay, story, and combat, let's quickly look at the context around this game and why so many people were skeptical before release. Aside from some flashy combat trailers, Lost Soul Aside barely promoted itself, especially concerning the story elements that the developers claimed to take seriously. For those interested in more than just the combat, this was an immediate red flag. The promotional material was almost entirely combat focused, with nearly nothing else shown. When the game launched, there were no early reviews, no guides, and barely any coverage. I don't know if Sony avoided sending review copies, or if content creators just weren't interested, but either way, that silence was telling. Contrast that with a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, where Sony was confident enough to let people play it early and even lifted the embargo a week before release, if I remember correctly. Man, that game was gold. Once Lost Soul Aside released, negative articles and coverage flooded in, ensuring the game wouldn't gain popularity. Sadly, the creator of this game, Yang Bing, who has been working on it since the first concept 10 years ago, when he was a solo developer, cannot be happy with the state his game is in. The Steam charts tell the whole story, and it's not like there's any reason to think the PlayStation equivalent chart would be any different, at least in trajectory. And with my tinfoil hat on, it's easy to think Sony knew this would happen, hence the lack of early reviews. Even though it's commonly stated that the game took 10 years to make, in practice it seems to be around 4, since they said they had a clear direction and started development in 2021. Nevertheless, it cannot be a happy time for Yang Bing right now. But unlike him, you can be happy as a gamer knowing that Instant Gaming have amazing discounts for you all the time, on any game. Whether it's PC or console, gift cards or subscriptions, Instant Gaming has you covered. You can use my link you see on the screen for amazing discounts at Instant Gaming, and you'd be helping the channel too. You can even get the brand new Hell Is Us for a crazy discount right now. And that's not everything. There's even a monthly giveaway for a game of your choice. Details in the description. Thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video, and to you for supporting my content. Now back to this review. Let's talk performance. This feels like a typical PlayStation port where it runs better on PlayStation than PC. I played on PC with a mid-range setup, and the saddest part is, the game actually performed pretty well, except for the first hour or so. During the intro, there are constant FPS drops down to 5 or 10 sometimes, and they last anywhere from 5 to 20 seconds, mostly during transitions between gameplay and cutscenes. These performance issues can easily leave a bad first impression. Fortunately, they mostly disappear after the opening hour. Out of my 23-hour playthrough, I'd say it ran perfectly fine for 95% of the time, with that problematic 5% concentrated in the beginning. There are other baffling technical issues though. Freezing at the end of cutscene shots.
It wasn't easy, but I got the parade passes.
Not here. There are too many eyes. Kaiser, it's good to have you back.
Sudden immersion-breaking moments of complete silence for a second or two before cutscene transitions.
You're all Kaiser.
For a game running on Unreal Engine 4, it's surprising that these basic issues persist even after a day 1 patch. Let me know in the comments if you experienced similar issues on PC or even PlayStation, or encountered other problems that I might have missed. You've probably heard this if you followed the game's development, but the creator is a massive Final Fantasy fan and openly stated how it influenced his style and art direction. While that influence is clear throughout, the first hour feels like an almost direct Final Fantasy VII copy. Nearly everything screams Final Fantasy VII. Assembling a gang of rebels to fight against an empire, the environment design, even the soldier outfits, and the overall vibe. Actually, even the main city hub looks just as circular as Midgar, just missing the reactor in the middle. But sadly, even that Final Fantasy VII influence fades quickly after the intro. and you're left with a very simple story. A straightforward sequence of set pieces, hunting down a handful of MacGuffins across different maps before facing the big bad. Which naturally brings us to the story. As I mentioned in my preview, it was a clear red flag that a story-focused game provided little to no promotional details about voice actors, casting, or character development approaches. You'll normally have some of the main character voice actors give some interviews about how they felt this amazing character speak to them and the cool vibes they felt and how it's so different from anything else they played before. That's what games that are trying to sell a good story do. None of that happened. And when you play the game, it becomes obvious why. This is probably the most obvious early game cringe one. But even later on, there are things like this one.
Are you alright?
Yes, thanks. You make a pretty good cushion, Kaiser.
Good to know.
It just sounds so lifeless, just people reading from a script trying to act. Most of the voice acting feels completely soulless and phoned in at best. It's ironic that the only character that feels like the actor is really trying is the dragon companion, Arena, which is also such a dumb, weird name for a cosmic dragon, or anything really. And because he's the only one trying, he still sticks out like a sore thumb because he sounds awkward, as if he's acting alone in an empty theater surrounded by soulless puppets. And it's not just the acting. The writing and editing are disappointingly shallow. I don't know if localization was rushed, translation was poor, or what happened, but everything from narrative to story to voice acting is mediocre at best. Let me know in the comments if you played with the original voice acting and whether it's any different, because the English version was not impressive. The game has a fairly simple progression system. I initially thought I'd be making guides for this game, but there are no valuable tips to give. Any tips video would be just filler content. You get 4 weapons that you can equip simultaneously and switch between them during combat. Each weapon has sockets for random gems that provide various stat boosts. It's the most half-hearted attempt at depth I've seen in quite a while. Each weapon has a skill tree, and you can fully invest in all of them, and you should, because each tree contains core buffs that you need, like extra potion slots scattered across different trees, like this one for example in the greatsword, and then this one in the spear. The weapon upgrade trees aren't even really trees, they are mostly linear, with no complex branches or meaningful decisions. Your dragon companion has special abilities too, that unlock by finding specific items as you progress through the story. And you don't have any choice there either. You find the item, you go to unlock the ability, you find another copy of the item, you upgrade that ability to the next rank. And I don't think those drops are random. I didn't miss many, but you don't get to unlock all ranks on your first playthrough. You get those upgrade materials in further playthroughs, but it's simply just another no-brainer system. The game doesn't even drop you many weapons, at least on the first playthrough. I stuck with the greatsword from chapter 1, socketed some gems into it, and literally face-rolled every boss except maybe 2. Both trash and bosses in this game are laughably easy. And since there's no difficulty options, you can't really make the game challenge you in any way, at least in your first playthrough. Have you noticed how many times I've hinted at multiple playthroughs? We'll talk about that in a bit. But naturally, this leads us to talk about combat. There is no doubt that combat is the star of the show. If you want hack and slash DMC style combat while playing a Noctis Cloud hybrid in a Final Fantasy setting, here it is. There's decent variety in abilities, and the fact that you can create combos using all weapons is a cool way to encourage creativity. Oddly, the game seems to disrespect the starting sword for some reason. Of the 4 weapons, the other 3 are both useful and fun to use. The greatsword, for example, doubles as a skateboard, though it doesn't boost your speed much, and the scythe is used in puzzles and platforming sections, while the spear works as a projectile for flying enemies, although there's nearly none of those, and you can also use it in solving some puzzles. If hack and slash is your main interest, the game delivers adequately. It's cool and flashy, though it can become too noisy with both visuals and sound effects. In terms of enemy design, the game also lacks variety. Most of the enemies you fight tend to be variants of the so-called Voidraks, but even with a superficial variety, you feel they're too simple and too much alike. The first chapter is actually pretty cool because it feels like a boss rush. You fight 5 or 6 bosses back to back with minimal trash encounters in between. Unfortunately, the further you go into the game, the more you realize this approach is completely flipped. The game really feels like it's padding the playtime for no good reason or added value at all. This fight is probably the biggest offender. Check this out. You get to this boss platform, fight those mobs for about 2 minutes, and then you have to run around and activate those switches. Then a gate opens to take you to the next platform.
That was a pretty deadly trap.
And guess what? Trash enemies spawn, you fight them for 2 more minutes, then activate another 4 switches around the platform, then a middle one to protect you from the fire breath. And then you fight the boss, but that's not the end. The boss escapes and spawns trash mobs again with an elite at the end. You fight them for 2 more minutes.
Taste this! Running out of energy.
Let's activate it again.
Then activate the switches again, but oh no, this time they have a barrier, so you have to go around them to activate the switches. Then you have to activate the middle switch again to avoid the fire breath, then you can fight the boss again and finally beat him. Despite all this, neither enemy waves or the boss even had any mechanics worth noting. None of these fights were engaging, interesting, or complex beyond reducing health bars to 0. Actual peak time wasting. When you finish the game, you unlock difficulty options and boss rush mode, and they're exactly what they sound like. This reveals or confirms something that was pretty obvious about the game's design. It's built from the ground up for replayability, which makes sense since the developers know combat is their only strength. But for me at least, to replay a game, I need different builds, playstyles, or at least a truly awesome and addictive combat. Lost Soul Aside's combat isn't bad, but it's not groundbreaking either. Given that you can experience all playstyles in one playthrough, enemy variety is limited, and the unbelievable padding near the end makes replaying the game feel dreadful rather than exciting. And that's kind of the worst part. If you're not going to replay this game, the price is a complete rip-off in my opinion. Expedition 33 definitely created a bias towards small ideas growing and getting made by small studios and still be capable of pleasantly surprising us by being absolute masterpieces. But this one, it's not in the same universe as that success story. Nearly every aspect of this game feels shallow, uninspired, or at best rushed and inauthentic. While the combat is passable and can be enjoyable if you need some brain-dead hack and slash action, it doesn't carry the game past any metric of success, and it definitely doesn't justify the absurd price that Sony has nailed into this game's coffin. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.